And we are live. How are we all doing tonight? I'm Christopher Balzano. Oh, did it wrong.
And I'm Natalie, Crist.
And welcome to Tripping on Legends Live. Tonight's episode is called Enough is Enough. Did you?
It's kind of brutal.
Enough is Enough. Did you ever watch 8 is Enough?
No.
No?
Look at the camera.
No, I'm sorry. So that was like one of the dominant shows of my childhood was 8 is Enough. Loved that show.
Okay.
Do you know anything about it?
I don't. No.
No. Okay.
Is this like 10 years before my time?
This is before my time.
Oh,
How we doing, Rom? How you doing tonight? So the inspiration for this show is the theme of tonight is when have you gotten enough information to share, right? When have you gotten enough information to say I can go public with this? Because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I guess part of what we're going to be talking about also is there a difference as a paranormal from a paranormal perspective as opposed to a folklore perspective, right? So we have our feet in both worlds. We are part paranormal investigators, part folklorists. I want to look at you. I don't want to. I'm trying to think, do I look better like this with the hat like this? Now it looks like...
No, I like that.
You like this?
Yeah,
you want me to like this? Okay, I think I look like... Okay, so one of the things I posted recently, what's up, sister, is that I think my body's going through a change, and no matter what I do with my hair, I look like a Lego. So maybe I'll go without that, or my dad, one or the other. My dad is a Lego, I guess. So before we get into that, just very quickly, I want to put a call out there again for our logo. We have a few events coming up, including the Southwest Florida Paranormal UFO and Paranormal show, and I want to make like a banner or have merch and that kind of stuff. And our logo is something that we kind of stumbled into. It was supposed to be a placeholder, and we've now had it for like 5 years. So I'm putting a call out there for logo, but I wanted to get you on camera.
No.
Oh, see, I keep turning it the wrong way. I wanted to get you on camera, or at least your voice on camera. Of what do you think? What do you think our logo should be? Like when you envision us, if you had to logotate us.
I don't think that's really.
It's not a word, but it doesn't matter. If you had to logotate us, like what would that logo be?
I think it has to be TOL, and I think it has to be something fun with the letters. I'm big about.
Fun with letters?
Yeah, fun with letters.
Okay.
Like maybe a ghost peeking out of the O. You know,
a ghost peeking out of the O?
Yeah, I don't know, something like that.
Okay, so you're going with the seriously theory of it.
Yeah.
Why don't you like the zombie?
Because
like since day one. So if you notice, we have two logos. One is the zombie listening to the iPod. And that was actually from one of my books. So I think technically I own the rights to that picture and can use it in perpetuity, at least until someone tells me to stop. And because we paid for it, the company paid for it. And so I've been using it for a whole bunch of stuff. And then the second one is a picture of the woods. It technically is the picture of the woods in Taunton, near Taunton Hospital, that was drawn to me by an old student of mine who had a ghostly experience when he tried to break out of Taunton State. And he was in the cemetery, and all these voices started telling him, go back, and started being touched by all these ghosts.
Told me about that story
and
before.
So he went into, hello, how are we all tonight? He went in back. He literally escaped from the jail that was there, and then went back. And this is a picture he drew me of how he felt as he was out in the woods.
I think you have to use that one.
But that's boring. That's the one we've been using. That was the very first one.
I know.
That's what that picture is.
That's the one I love. Yeah.
Okay, we're moving. We're going to transition out of this because I don't think we can agree upon a logo.
I think
but we would love to have people.
Choice. This is your.
It's not, because anyone who knows Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads knows that I cannot design things. It was the most boring looking website of all time. And so I'm calling on
a ghost would be peeking out of the O.
A ghost would, okay, well, we'll work on it. If you guys have ideas, you've listened to the show and you have an idea about what kind of is our personality, whatever, just please get back to us about it. But let's get to the topic.
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. Enough is enough. 8 is enough to fill our lives with
Stop.
Okay, so here. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little story. So President Bush died.
Yeah.
How do you feel about President Bush Sr.?
It was his time. Go be with your wife.
No, I mean like as a president. Like,
As a president.
Yeah.
I'm Republican.
You're a Republican.
I am.
Okay, so he was a good president for you?
Sure.
All right, good. That's why we reelected him. He was so awesome. Oh, wait a minute. That's right. He didn't get reelected. And I see that Anthony has come in, so Anthony can appreciate part of this story, at least the beginning parts of it. So I remember the day that Ronald Reagan died.
Okay.
And I was at my Auntie Maria's house, and we were sitting she had this almost like a living room, like a makeshift, like a den. And we were watching all of these. It was some kind of party. We were watching all of these tributes to Ronald Reagan. And as I was watching the tribute to Ronald Reagan, I thought that they had mentioned something about Ronald Reagan being involved in a UFO encounter, right? Which I guess really did happen. So supposedly this incident really did happen, where he had Air Force One like follow the UFO, like there was all of this stuff. But for some reason I heard it.
Why is this not more popular if this really happened?
Well, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Because I might have misheard it.
I'm glad you asked.
I'm glad you asked. I might have misheard it. I don't know. But the way that I remember it sitting there watching it was that it took place in Fall River.
Okay.
And then I remember hearing something else about it. And so I started always referring to this incident where over the Freetown State Forest, Ronald Reagan saw a UFO and forced Air Force One to follow it and all this kind of stuff. And it became part of the lore of the Freetown State Forest. And it started getting mentioning in books. And now I don't know if it happened. A little bit ago, I tried to track down, like, when do we first start hearing this? And all we got to is that, like, it never really happened. But we didn't really get to when it first came out. So I think I was the first one to push out that misinformation, right? So to hear something, and before I could confirm it, before I could get multiple sources on it, I started talking about it. And I think just because I was one of the strong voices of that time about that subject, everyone started referring to it. And it started appearing on websites and started appearing on, and yet I don't believe it ever actually happened.
Why don't you believe it ever actually happened?
Because there's no documentation about it whatsoever. There is documentation of it happening in California, I've heard, but once again, misinformation, I don't know. Like, people have told me, no, that's an incident that happened, and the California incident is up on other websites and stuff like that. But I pushed that information out.
So you've never found information about it?
I've never found any information to confirm that Ronald Reagan saw a UFO in the Bridgewater Triangle and made a deal out of it.
But you put it up on, like, your website and stuff?
Yeah, because I heard it.
Because you heard it.
I heard it, right? And so that's kind of like what tonight's episode is about. So we have a whole bunch of information. And we gather this information, and then we, in a rush and in our excitement, we publish it. We put it out there. And sometimes that becomes, I feel like I'm looking wicked chubby in this.
You just have to stop looking at me.
And so at what point have you gotten enough information? You've confirmed things enough, or you feel like you have a good enough handle on something to put it out there. Now that could be evidence, that could be stories, that could be just what you've done. Now we've had about 4 dozen legend trips that we've been on, right?
Right.
We have 50 episodes, but we've been on more places than we've necessarily done interview episodes on, or we've done different things, or we've gone different places that were multiple places, and we've gathered a lot of information. And the way we usually try to go about it, in the best circumstance, we've researched a place ahead of time. We've come to some conclusion of the place. Then we go out and experience the place. We try to talk to people. That's usually not that successful, as we want it to be.
Right.
And then we have all these questions that come up, right?
And then we research the heck out of them.
And then we research the heck out of them. But it's that research the heck out of them that I want to address tonight.
Okay.
Because at what point do we start to publish? Rob makes a good point that he doesn't believe anything until he sees it. At what point do you publish that information? As folklorists, or as what we do as legend trippers, at what point do we push stuff out to people?
I think you have to base it off of whatever the journalism rule is. What is the rule within journalism? When do they get to publish? When they have a confirmed source?
I think it's two confirmed sources on it. But oftentimes we're like grasping at fog, right? And so getting one source
But even if it's not, even if we're publishing something that's not necessarily true or didn't really happen, it's still out there. It's still information that's out there. So even if we don't have two confirmed sources that can say, yes, this is occurring or this is why this is happening, you can still push it out there with that disclaimer of, this is what I know.
Right, and is that good? Like,
this is my opinion on it. This is my take on it.
Once again, because Rob asks, or he says, when we have proof, right? When there's proof.
Proof of what?
And so, that's why I just posted. I'm like, what about when there is no proof, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think of a few of our cases that we've done.
Right, like what constitutes proof?
Right, and that, okay, so let's talk about from, is a place haunted?
Okay.
Okay, we'll start with that basic concept. Mm-hmm. So about a year ago, we went to a place, and it was your first time doing an investigation. Mm-hmm. And really was kind of a preface to a cleansing. These people wanted to get rid of the ghosts. And we've never published that stuff because it was a friend of mine, and it was... But do you think that house is haunted? Was haunted? Do you think that there were ghosts in that house? Okay. At what point, if we were investigators and we had the right to publish that stuff, at what point would you push out that we had been in this house and this house was haunted and here's the evidence? And
my strongest evidence was the kiss in the mirror.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
You
and
did?
The sparkles.
And the sparkles in the
and the sparkles. Uh-huh. So that would be enough for you to say, like, this place is haunted. We're putting it out there.
Yeah, there's something absolutely. Uh-huh.
I think we're in a rush, and I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I would love to get the audience's feedback on that. I think we're in a rush to put stuff out there.
We or in general?
In general, like the society. I don't mean tripping on legends. I mean, like, as a society, like, we're a published thing.
Well,
we're a social media.
We want our 15 minutes. Everybody is looking for their 15 minutes of fame. And the quicker that they can get something out there and be the first one or be the most obnoxious even.
Yeah, I mean, be the loudest voice, even if it's the worst voice.
Exactly. And I think that's different from days of old where they would have done more.
Days of old. Okay.
Because it wasn't as easy to transmit information.
Right, and so they had a better value, or they cherished actual information. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think there was disinformation back in the day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that, if you look at old newspaper articles, it's kind of interesting. If you look at old newspaper articles that talk about paranormal things, they push it forward with no backup.
Right. With no
so if they talk about a haunted place or they talk about a sea serpent that's been spotted, right? They just like publish it. There was no backup for it. There was no. It was. I don't know if they didn't take the subject seriously and therefore they didn't feel it was like real literature or real news. And
let's
so they
talk about it in actual literature.
What do you mean?
Let's talk about different stories like the Christmas Carol, for example.
Oh, the Christmas Carol, dear to my heart. Yes.
So things like that talk about a supernatural or paranormal experience that maybe have a more complete story.
And that might be a different show of like what is the paranormal responsibility to someone who's writing fiction, mm-hmm. because I think that's a wider berth. Like you don't have to have proof of anything. You don't have to have anything backed up if you're writing fiction. Right, all you're loyal to is whether the audience believes it to be true in the context of the story. Suspension of disbelief, right? So I don't think there's necessarily it's not a vital call to be accurate with what you report.
I don't think that as a folklorist or a paranormal investigator, anybody can prove you wrong.
Really? You don't think that someone can say like, okay, so I got in picture yourself capturing ghosts on film. Worst book ever. There's this picture and it was like, and it was a ghost, and look at this thing, and here's the backed up story, and I'm like, except for the fact the dude is smoking a cigarette right there. You know, it's like, it's obvious.
Say there's not something there?
Because the smoke she's talking about is literally coming from the cigarette. You can see the little stream.
Okay.
You know, but what I'm saying is that like you can look at evidence and say like that's not That's not accurate, right? Like so many people have commented on
but
our.
Wait a minute, time out. But if she had experienced something other than the smoke.
Well, she was saying the smoke was evidence of what she was
what?
experiencing being a ghost.
Okay, but you can't take away her experience. You can't prove her experience.
Right, but I can prove that evidence, or I can show that. And we did a whole ghostly evidence episode. But like, I could say that, like, well, right, I can explain why that picture's the way it is, and I'm not doing like deep thing of like it's photoshopped or I mean, it's like literally clearly like you can see the kid smoking a cigarette, and the cigarette's creating the smoke. But we've had a lot of people give feedback on the picture that we took at the Venice train depot the first time we were there, where it was my smoke. And I published that picture because it looks really cool. And people have said, "Oh my God, that's a great ghost picture." And I'm like, it's not. It was cold and I was smoking a cigarette. Like, it's clearly not a ghost. So, I mean.
But as a paranormal investigator and as a folklorist, I don't think if you're having experience, anybody can come in and say, no, you didn't.
We're not talking about experience. We're talking about, okay. But you understand the difference between
part of it.
Evidence and experience are two different things.
Right.
Right. And so we at Tripping on Legends are very big on the idea of the experience is important.
Correct.
But then what is your responsibility to your audience to put that out there, I guess is what I'm now talking about.
Put what out there?
Put out that this was a experience that someone had, and this is ghosts. This is a ghostly experience.
This is what our opinion is. I think right away, as soon as you feel it's appropriate, it's your duty as a...
It's your duty. She said duty.
An entertainer and author.
Well, okay.
To give the people that are interested in what you're doing, content.
So, and I think that you make a distinction there between a journalist or a reporter or even a documentarian or archivist and an entertainer. So do you think that the audience, and I would love to get your guys' opinion once again, that the audience can make that distinction between this is entertainment as opposed to documenting history, right? Because we're big on history. We're big on like, we use the history to get into the legend. We use the legends to teach the history, right? But are we doing history a disservice by putting this stuff out without enough backup? Because we're doing it for entertainment value or purposes. Well, when is enough enough?
When is it enough backup? Because when you recording a historical event, and how much backstory do you have to give? And who's to say that that's even an accurate record? I mean, we know several accounts of where we found historical records to be inaccurate. Can
you give me an example? Because I'm going to talk about a few of the examples, but I would love to know one that's in your head.
Stanford is in my head.
What? Stanford. Oh, Stanford. Okay.
Stanford, the college.
Stetson, you mean?
Stetson, that's what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah, Stetson.
This is one of the ones I was going to bring up.
Oh, okay.
And Rob, your book is amazing for those haunted like me. Rob is talking about his book. It's based on true experiences. That's a truly amazing book. Have you read that?
No.
I thought I gave you a copy of it.
No.
I'll give you a copy of it. You'll like it. Okay,
awesome.
Good. Continue.
I don't remember the details,
Stetson.
but keep going.
No, okay, so Stetson's a really good example because we got that picture. We pushed that picture out there almost immediately as we got it. And one of the things that we noticed about Stetson was that there was a lot that was not true that we were hearing, right? And so we've criticized her for that. We've criticized that writer for putting all this information out there and it not being true. And it not be now, and that was.
Well, there's a difference between not being true and blatantly lying. There's a total difference between pushing misinformation that you've done research on. Rob, sorry. That you've done research on, that you're just finding a different source that's giving you inaccurate information and just cherry picking and adding names and locations and dates to things that didn't even really exist.
Okay, so she's dead.
Right.
Right. So we can't talk to her about what she did,
right?
Whether she did research and found this, whether she heard this,
but we found and then other she pushed authors, it forward. Unfortunately, they're also
and
passed,
so, right. It seems like all of our authors are dead.
That's the title of the next episode.
Right, dead authors, dead Irish poets. So we can't say that she intentionally misrepresented the information, like that she picked out the information. Sorry, that she picked out the information and said, "I'm going to lie about this. I'm just going to put it out there." We weren't able to find anything that she found to back it up, so we don't know where the hell she got it. And a simple Google search would have been able to say, like, the location that you're saying has the suicide doesn't have the suicide because it didn't exist when you say it did. But are we guilty of that too? So we've followed in the shadow of books like Weird Florida, right? And Weird Florida is a good one to get into a little bit because, once again, dead author, unfortunately. But we've been doing research side by side with like Mark Muncy, right? And he's got Weird Florida. He's got Eerie, Florida, and I can't remember the name of his new one. But we're publishing conflicting reports of things, right? So we're going to the same location, and our research is different. So if we look at something like, and Stetson's a really good example, we have no idea. We pushed out information about Elizabeth, right? Hall. Is it Elizabeth Hall? Yeah, Elizabeth Hall.
Elizabeth Hall.
We're not sure about that stuff. We've never backed up the history of Elizabeth Hall or what might have happened or what
but we
Elizabeth.
have firsthand accounts.
Right, so we have firsthand accounts, and so we've pushed that part out of it. But to round that out as folklorists, we've tried to put it in context, but we haven't. A better example might be, I've had a really hard time writing the chapter on the mini lights. And I think that there's a lot of information out there about the mini lights. At what point do I say I've gathered enough about that story? So if you've never seen the mini lights or listened to the mini lights episode, you should do that because it's one of the more interesting urban legends that we've covered.
So
would you agree with that?
I do. Okay,
I think it's one of, and I think it hasn't gotten enough play.
Yeah.
For what it is. I mean, it's a huge cultural one, and I was bringing it up because someone was talking about gentrification, and so I brought up the story again. But there's so much going on there that is outside of what we've touched upon that I feel like every time I go to write the travel log is easy because this is our experience. But when I'm writing, like, what does it mean? What is the legend? What is the source of the legend? How far back can we go? I stop.
But wait a minute. Your job as an author and what your readers want to hear is your opinion. What you've gathered from all of this information, what your opinion is, what your conclusion is. And then you're supposed to be thought-provoking towards your readers. They're supposed to then take it the next step and then say, well, this is what I think may have happened, or this is what I think it may be about. I think it's your responsibility to put your opinion out there based upon our experiences and the information that we've gathered.
Well, I think one of the issues is that if you're putting stuff out there, you should be an authority on it, right? Like, you might not be the utmost expert on it, but you should be an authority. So if I'm speaking on the mini lights or writing about the mini lights in this case, I feel like I should know every single thing there is to know about it, or else I can't present the full picture for someone, right? Because then it becomes strictly my opinion based on this much information, as opposed to.
You don't think that we've researched the mini lights extensively?
Well, and when is enough, right? So, like, for example, there's more research we could do about that, right? So have we ever confirmed what we read in a random newspaper about little kids being fed to alligators? No. And that potentially being like, so is it fair for us to put out there that
is it confirmable?
Well, I mean, and that's the issue. If that can't be confirmed. Now, a newspaper published that.
And why is it up to you to confirm it? Why can't you just say this has not been confirmed?
Do you think that lessens the story?
No.
Like, it has not been confirmed, but
here's a couple of different ideas of what's behind this, whether it's supernatural or whether it's cultural. Here are the different ideas that we've come across. Nothing has been confirmed.
I was waiting for someone, and thank you, Rob took it over. He said there are no experts on the paranormal, but I think that there can be an expert on your subject matter.
But your subject matter is folklore. Your
right.
subject matter is why
so my
these
subject
stories,
matter,
how these stories shape us.
But therefore, if I'm speaking about the mini lights, I feel like I need to know all of those stories and all of the context of that to be able to present a picture. I need to become an expert, even though you say there's no experts. I need to become an expert on the history of that place. And we're dealing with that now with Croom, right? Mm-hmm. With we're getting all this information, we're looking into it. But at what point can we start to really talk about it? Like, at what point have we reached?
But wait, something that you're not considering, the mini lights, Croom, maybe not Croom, but the mini lights, the Devil's Treat, all of these things are still evolving. So you're never
stories are evolving.
Right. So you're never going to be able to stay current enough. You have to present the information that you have at that time.
Good, but I like the way you phrased that with like you're not current enough and the stories evolve but the story evolves from here forward, right? Mm-hmm. But it's the here back that's my issue. That's the thing that like trips me up sometimes, is that I feel like I need to legitimately be able to say, here's the name of the place that we're kidnapping these kids. If you don't know the story, the mini lights, if you listen to the episode, one of the things we discovered afterwards in a newspaper article, which was published in modern time, like it was published recently. It was after we did the episode, was this idea that black kids were being taken off the street and fed to alligators in the alligator farms. And so they were being kidnapped, and potentially that was one of the reasons why this urban legend, this legend came up, was to protect kids, to give them a reason to not, as if you go, you're going to be kidnapped by alligator hunters and fed to them. That wouldn't be scary enough. But anyway, do we need to know all that stuff before we go forward?
I think you make a concerted effort in order to try and confirm or try and get some sort of backup for the things that you read.
Yeah. And I think to some degree
there has to be a point where you say, okay,
is there a point where so when I've probably done more than I have before, right? But when I wrote like my first Bridgewater Triangle books, I was a kid from Boston who lived in New Hampshire, who was back in Boston, who was writing about a very fertile and rich area of Massachusetts, of which I had no idea. Like I had never been there. I had no experience there. I was pushed there by the book, but then also New England Ghost Files, but then also my boss who lived in that area and told me research. And what I came across was a very fiery and vocal local population who took the area that they lived in very seriously. And I was an outsider. And I all of a sudden published a book that had glaring misinformation. I see what you're saying. And it was like, well, that's because you're an outsider and you wrote this book. You have no idea what Wareham's like. You're not from Wareham. You don't live in Wareham. Like, you don't know the culture of Wareham.
I think that as an outsider, you can still form an opinion. Right? Right,
but I think it's like, when do you have enough information? When do you have enough of that contextual information to be able to say, like, okay, so let's switch like to Croom, right? How deep should we go into the history of it before we really start to make connections and write about it and push stuff out there? We've pushed stuff, and I think that there's a difference between us sitting here and talking tonight or the show and publishing stuff, right? Because whether it's a blog, whether it's an actual book, you're putting something in writing. And writing seems like more, you and I can talk right now, we can chit chat, and we can you go on talk radio or whatever, and you're talking about stuff, and there's a certain level of integrity to it, but there's also a certain level of, it's just people chat, just people shooting the shit, right? But once you start to publish things, it almost takes on like a different responsibility.
A more concrete format.
Yeah. Kind of like an expectation of what, because then people throw out fake news, like I probably should have hashtagged this fake news.
You really should have.
By the way, did you save this? Did you share this to
No, I don't have my phone. Okay. I will.
Okay. Well, it's too late now. Don't worry about it now. It's too late.
Forgot.
All right. That's okay. You've got one job.
I know, right? I think that you have to, like I said, make an effort, right? Your very best effort. And in regards to Croom, I think that you have to go back and find the earliest possible settlement that you can in that general vicinity.
Okay.
Right? So going back to Native American times, because we're trying to tie together, is it something in the land? Is it something in the area? Is it something with that specific name? You know what I'm saying? So you have to do your due diligence. You have to do your homework. But then...
It's that due diligence that okay, continue.
But there comes a point where you have to say, I've tapped all my resources.
Right.
If you are at the point where you're like, I don't know where else to go, then it's time to publish.
And I think, and I think that we've, because now we're really talking about folklore. And if history can back up folklore, which it can't necessarily, sometimes you get a convergence and you're like, haha. But oftentimes it's, these stories that are being told in an area are inspired by real events, and so you want those real events, but then you find conflicting reports of the real event, and that really trips me up. And Croom is a great example of, there seems to be 17 different stories about where that city came from and where that town came from, right? So how do we start to unravel that spaghetti to figure out what's the strand to go with?
It's up to you to present all of them, because that's why the basis of folklore is this part. These are the different reasons why this.
What's going on, Ramon? Yeah, but I think that, how far back do you go? Like, how far back do you, at what point do you say?
Are you looking for a number, like 200 years?
200 years. No, I'm just looking up in general, and I'd love to get people's feedback specifically on this, in terms of like whether you've published stuff or whether you've read stuff, like where. So I think of like probably 5 or 6 of the of the trips that we've been on, of the legend trips and the folklore that we've tried to document, that we got really hyped up about it and really wanted to do the research about it. And then whether it was our energy and effort or whether we got the next thing, we left it behind. And so I always feel uncomfortable writing about it or talking about it, because I'm like, it ends with a question mark. And whereas I think question marks are good if you're saying, what could all this mean? But if your question mark is based on the idea of like, we just gave shit up, then that's not a good enough question mark. Because then someone will always come back and say, no, it's not like that, it's like this. So,
okay, so wait a minute. What's your intention with your publication?
What are your intentions?
What's your intention with your publication? Are you looking to prove, disprove? Are you looking to showcase the meaning behind the folklore of different areas? What you have to ask yourself, what is your intent, and answer that question. So
what is your intent? Like as one of these people, like you are a legend tripper. You are but you are a legend tripper.
I'm just a sidekick. I have no powers. You're
just my Robin.
Exactly.
We're the Batman, by the way. Because I have 23 Batman shirts.
So I don't have any intent. My intent is to help you with research.
Yeah, and I think that the one of the issues that I have is that it is evolving, right? The folklore is evolving. So once again, I'm going to bring up Mark and Weird Florida, and there's very different versions of the Devil's Tree, and there's some factual things that can't be denied, like their court documents or their police reports. Things like that. And then there's like the mystique behind it and stuff like that. I feel that that's like one of the stories that is still up in the air, right? So can we publish about it when we really have no idea? And if you don't know the Devil's Tree, like just search for the Devil's Tree. We're probably gonna be the first one that comes up. Right. Honestly, we are like that's like kind of our foundation. That's getting more hits than anything. But like we've got that whole forest aspect of it. There are still so many question marks, right? So this is kind of like, this is the case that really made me think about tonight's episode was mini lights, Croom, and then.
Okay,
and
so
then this
what
one.
is your intent? What do you want to tell people about Devil's Tree? Why it exists?
Well, yeah, like
intent?
My intent is to
Is it to share
present,
our experience?
right? Because we're not proving things. No, it's beyond that. It's beyond that. I don't want it's because it's not about us. It's not about our experience. That's the travel log. That's fine.
Right.
We went to a place we hadn't experienced. But I think that we've pushed forward. I'm just taking the hat off now because it's annoying me. But my hair is a mess. But
nobody cares about your hair. You're beautiful.
That's painful.
You're beautiful.
Beautiful. You are beautiful. In the forest, in Oak Hammock Park, there is evil that lies there. That's my intent, right? We've been unable to prove what those foundations are, right? Okay, so we could go there, Port St. Lucie. We could pull up records. I mean, we've tried to do this online.
Only online. It's different in person.
Right. We've tried to even track down. We got in contact with the brick company, even. Right? So some might say that is an above and beyond to try to figure out what these foundations are. Okay. So imagine we go to Port St. Lucie Town Hall and they don't have anything.
But you've done that step. But then
we haven't
published that you've done that step.
Well, I don't think we have really gone like.
No. I'm saying, you're saying imagine that you did. When you go to publish, even if you don't find anything, you're still able to say, hey, I took these steps. This is what I did. This is what I've come up empty-handed.
Yeah, see, that's what really, because I'm like, I feel like that can't be empty-handed. Like, we can't start to theorize about what might be going on there without knowing what that building was,
well,
why it
get
existed.
Off your ass and go do it.
That's kind of the point of the episode. Is like, imagine that I can't. Like, at what point do you get off your ass? Like, so even if we were to publish it on trippigonlegends.wordpress.com, and it's out there, right? So we were to say, and this is kind of like the way Mini Lights felt to me when I put it out there over the summer. We can say that it's just a blog, and we're putting the information out there to inspire other people to contact us about what might be. Oh, no, I heard this. Like, we're hoping that that's a way that people do it, because people, whether historians or like, they search out, they find us out, and they say, oh, wait a minute, I actually know the story behind that, and they come in contact with us. But in the meantime, while it's out there, and this is the issue that I really have, in the meantime, while it's out there, it grows traction on its own. It grows momentum. It grows its own legs. Right? It becomes Ronald Reagan over the Freetown State Forest following a UFO.
And then devolves, yes.
Right, but then that's a lie. That's like folklore by lying.
But you're not lying. You're presenting it as this is a story that we've heard. And
I understand that in terms of like communicating with the audience directly, right? But when you're writing, I think that then becomes its own living, breathing thing, which can be truth, right? So we talked about in the Pukwudgie episode, for example, like the whole strawberry incident. We've talked about different things I've said about on different radio shows or whatever, getting it out there, and then all of a sudden it becomes a truth and gets spread and disseminated and spread until you can't figure out the origin of it again, which is great from a folklorist perspective, except for the fact if you're doing that out of negligence, I'm not sure it's a positive thing.
So the only answer to any of this is if you have something that you find interesting or fascinating and you want to tell the story and you want to get as many facts as you possibly can, get off your ass and go research.
Right. And then at what point is getting off my ass? Have I gotten off my ass enough?
Well, you haven't checked town hall records for any of our locations. Right?
No, I haven't.
Okay, there you go.
I haven't.
So you have to go to the source. I think that you go to the source is the best thing to do.
Okay.
Because internet is so unreliable.
I'm with you on that. But if it's the internet, like town records within the internet, that's not unreliable, is it?
No, it's not. No.
Yeah, and I think the part of this is that, you know, you're presenting it as folklore loosely based on history or misinterpretations of history, and so there's a conflict of whether how much history you need to actually know. And like, I think we do more history than other places that I know, even, and that's not an attack on anybody.
But what do we take for history? We take secondhand accounts, right? Like, what exactly do we qualify as accurate historical record?
Yeah, I mean, because we've said literally, like, we've like, okay, we're gonna go to this place. Where is your source? I saw it a few places on the internet. It's in this book. Right, exactly. And you always go, people can't see it because it's on the radio, and Natalie doesn't like to be seen. Whoop! Ah, wrong way again. Totally true. That we've been like, you have said, really? That's it? Like, that's all? Like, are we getting it from anywhere else other than those sources? Because I'm not sure I want to go out tramping in the middle of the night if it's just like one reference on a website.
And that's great from a folklorist perspective, not necessarily historical, but you're both. And you're allowed to present both in different ways. Yeah, I like I said, I guess I struggle because I think that when people read folklore today, when they read The Devil's Tree, right? When they read Bloody Buckets, a really good example too. When they read those stories, they're assuming that the history in which the story took place is true, right? So when we were talking about, that's why you have. When we were talking about which one's the one of the book. Well, right, and that's what I don't want to do. I don't want to disclaim stuff. Yeah. You know, like, what's the disclaimer?
as you read, just keep in mind we might be completely full of crap. All right, like what's the disclaimer of that?
Disclaimer is, listen, we're here to analyze and break down what our opinion is. These mean. We are giving you the historical facts as we've been told they occurred.
But okay, excellent, right? Do you think? Because again, this is what I struggle with. Do you think that takes people out of the folklore aspect of it, right? So if you present the history, and you can present the history, and Anthony, I'll get to your question in a sec. If you present the history, and then give the folklore, it's almost like seamless. But if you say, just so you know, like put all these conditions upon it, does someone who's listening or hearing that story or reading that story get taken out of the story so much that it's like, oh my God, like I don't need these disclaimers. I don't need this. I don't need to know that you don't know everything. Like I just want the story.
Right.
But I'm presenting the story that I don't fully know.
Just don't beat a dead horse. That's all.
What do you mean by that?
Don't have a lengthy disclaimer. This is the story that was building up to this tale. Cannot be confirmed or denied. There you go.
Anthony asks, and so I'd love to get your feedback on this because I know my answer to it, but I want your answer to it.
Okay.
He asks, what if you only have a story and no hard facts? And it's important to know that this is a question coming from a cop. So he has no concern with facts whatsoever. So what if you only have a story and you have no hard facts? Can you think of a Shiloh Cemetery would be a really good example of that, right? Like we have no confirmed facts whatsoever about that legend.
Right.
So what if you only have a story, no hard facts? Go.
You research it. You research the hell out of it to the best of your ability. And if it's something that you feel has shaped or changed or made an impact on the community surrounding it or the folklore community in this case, you present it with the information that you do have. So
the last little slant on this I want, because this kind of thing feeds into it. How many sources do you need or how many references do you need for a story, a folktale, a haunting, a ghostly haunting, or ghostly legend before you feel that we can talk about it or push it out there? So, for example, the Swamp Witch is a really good example of this, right? So we've discovered all this stuff about the Swamp Witch and its deeper connections, and that's another whole thing of like whether you want to touch that with the racial undertones and like whether we want certain groups to be mad at us for researching that, right? But there's only really like one account, and that's not even a full account. It's like an obscure, like non-specific account of stuff that's going on. So can we legitimately say that that is a folklore or that's folklore of that area if 100 people don't know the story?
No, you can't. The Swamp Witch does not become folklore at that point in time. It becomes a story on the internet. We have no verbal history about it. We have no firsthand accounts of an experience. So unless you go to gather more interviews, more firsthand experience, which we have leads on. So you can't say that, we don't have anything. We just haven't done them. We have that other woman that supposedly knows all about.
Oh yeah, the citrus lady.
Right, exactly. So
citrus lady.
There might be in existence. You just have to actually follow through and go that extra mile. So if it's something that you feel would be worth it.
So one of I think as I was just looking at Crybaby Bridges, when I was doing that research, there was this whole article that I came across of this folklorist who wants to, and I don't know if it's his life goal or whatever, but there was a lot of references to this guy who wants to cut off Crybaby Bridges as folklore. Are not folklore, they are internet lies. And while those have their own value and those have their own place, it's technically not folklore.
Did they exist before the internet?
Well, according to this, he's saying like specific locations seem to have been as a motif or as a that seems to be internet generated. The majority of them seem to be internet generated, and often spread as if they are, or like that they're not a truth. Which that part's a little bit murky, but like are we doing folklore if we know that it's just a story someone told? Like, we can't confirm that it's just a story one person told. And so
what is folklore? Folklore is the collection of people.
Right. And so there's no collection. There's just a person. You know what I'm saying?
So if
like,
we can confirm that Sally Mae made it up last year, then yeah, no, it's not really folklore.
Well, right. I mean, and that's like the Bloody Bucket Bridge is an example of that, of like, it seems to us. And now here's the real trick of that one, is that we've pretty much confirmed that here's a nonfiction story. Here's a fictional story, I should say. And the girl clearly says, here's a fictional story I'm going to tell you about why I think this place is called this. And yet, still, there are documents that are supposedly out there that say that that's not true.
Where?
That the guy who wrote Weird Florida, whose name is escaping me right now, that he has like written accounts before then of people saying that they know the story just the way it's been told, with the whole midwife. I always forget that term.
Job.
Thank you. With the whole midwife and like that's a story that's been told for years in that area.
But we talk
and yet
to
this
people,
woman says that it's
people that actually live in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, right, but we talked to like 2 cops, and they didn't know anything, or they knew about it, and they're like, "Oh no, it's called because of this." But I guess that's what I'm saying. Like so there's conflicting, right? So the one path you can go down is this whole idea that there are these firsthand accounts that other people have seen that predate that internet publishing story, and then there's the internet publishing story, which clearly says I am making all of this up, and then that got traction. Are we spreading lies by talking about, like,
no?
You know, in other words, when I say, here's this woman, here's her story, here's the date of the story, here's the publication of the book, you know, a year later, like,
you're putting everything together, and it's up to your readers to make that conclusion. You can't assume that the readers are dumbasses and are just going to be like, well, God, Balzano was God.
Yeah, but don't you do that? Like, don't you...
No.
Not do you think I'm God, because that's obviously that you think I do. I am. But, I mean, I'm thinking more of the idea of, like, don't you, when you read something in a story, if you're reading a nonfiction book, okay, so the tipping point, right? So the whole story about I think it's monkeys. Is it monkeys? Monkeys, like, washing the sweet potatoes and stuff like that, and cooking the sweet potatoes, and this whole thing that's in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books. I read that, and I just naturally assume as a reader that story is true, right? That this whole story of monkeys learning from each other, even though they have no contact with each other, is true. I don't go researching the monkey story, right?
Yeah.
And I think
that's on you,
because there's a finite amount of time, like you know. So I think it's the same thing. If we had not backed up that story about Stetson and Hully Tower and it not even existing during the suicide, right?
We would have taken her for her word.
We would have taken her for her word. And how many people bought that book, read that story? How many people go to Earl Brown and say, you know what happened here in Earl Brown? I read it in a book once.
Right.
Right? When those are clear lies. So that's kind of the conflict that I go through, is that, you know, once again, especially because of all that stuff from Massachusetts, people have told me, like, they've attacked my integrity for it, or they've, like, said, like, oh, you lied about it. I don't like that. Or like, and here's the important thing. If we publish something today, like if we were to publish a book today, right? And then 3 years down the road, information is found to not be true, right? Because of sources that come out that's, you know, naturally, not necessarily in conflict with our book. And people say, you know how easily it would have been to find the truth of that? All you would have had to do is this, this, and this. I'm like, well, yeah, now I could have gone this, this, and this. But they don't see it that way. They see it as like...
I just think that you've got to grow a little bit of a thicker skin.
So this is a me issue. I think it's an integrity issue. It's not a me issue.
It's not an integrity issue because you're doing everything that you can, or you're going to do everything that you can to present the information that you have. End of story.
End of story. It's that simple for you.
It's that simple.
I wish I could part of your world, because I think it's, I don't know. I there's a certain responsibility that we have in documenting the folklore, because we are creating to some degree.
I'm not telling you to be vague. I'm telling you to do your job. Do your job.
Do your job. Right, but my job's so ill-defined in this. You know, because
But
we are by publishing something, right, which is different than the internet. When you're publishing, or even internet blogs or whatever, like when you're publishing something, you're setting it in concrete to a degree. You know what I'm saying? And I think we just have to be very careful about what we're pressing in there because, someone can always come back and say, well, you didn't have this, or why didn't you look at this, or if you had gone down to the town records, or if you had talked to this person. And we try to do that as much as we can. There's only so much time in the day, and there's only so many roads you can go down that actually are.
So again, I think as long as you present your path of information, how you've achieved your information, you're golden.
Okay. And on that note, stay gold, pony boy. On that note, we're going to wrap it up.
Yes, it's bedtime.
My name is Christopher Balzano.
And I'm Natalie Crist.
You can get in contact with us at spookytripping@gmail.com, which is also our Instagram. If you're watching this on Facebook, you obviously know our Facebook. So that's probably easy to find, but it's facebook.com/trippingonlegends. On Twitter, I am at Spooky Balzano.
And I'm at Nene.
Oh, you totally knew I was going to do it. I'm so predictable.
You really are.
And also, we want to put out again, and we're going to be putting links in the episode when we post it other places, but we are going to be one of the people who are at least going to be at the Southwest Florida UFO and Paranormal Conference. So we'd love for you guys, if you're local, to come down and talk to us with a logo or without a logo. We're going to be there. As well as, I don't know, we got Christmas lists. What are you asking the audience for Christmas if they want to buy us stuff?
Dog food.
Dog food. we have a new member of the Tripping on Legends family. Natalie has gotten a new dog who's named Negan. Right? Great name. And then she switched it to Hershey. So
It's a better name.
It's a better name, but not nearly as cool. Doreen is asking for you to reveal yourself.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Tell Doreen she can.
I'm going the wrong way again. Every time I think I have it, there's that.
Doreen she can FaceTime me.
She can although she won't answer your FaceTime, she'll have her daughter answer the FaceTime. Yeah, probably. But anyway, we are Tripping on Legends, and here's hoping that all of your trips, whether they're be able to be proved or not, backed up by evidence, are legendary. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for tuning in, guys.